of course, you have to know what you're building and how you build it and how you scale it. But also, one is to be truly passionate about sex and
Yeah.
whatever it is, whether it's health, whether it's therapy, whether it's pleasure, to truly care about that as the layer on top. And then, as a tangent from there, is understanding all the things you cannot do because it's in sex, and how do you navigate that. And this is brilliant because when we started, tech as a term didn't exist, and now it's evolved to cover anything from what typically used to be hardware as the main thing, to apps, to therapy, to even um, adult sites, which would traditionally be considered, purely sex, not sex tech, has evolved to be something like OnlyFans would even fall under that because they have a huge amount of tech, and it is a tech platform, at the end of the day. So I think the expansion of the term has really helped the industry because it kind of encompasses everybody who does anything in sexual health. And our specific focus is medtech, which obviously is a part of sex tech, and because it's regulated, we have to follow a whole host of other requirements like ISO 13485, FDA requirements, etc. But and that's the kind of stuff that I think the Q&A will be very useful in, is navigating all the way from concepting a device, a tech device, to user journeys, patient trials, regulatory approvals, reimbursement, and then ultimately doctors and rollout. So yeah, so anything from that whole journey, I would love to chat about.
Yeah, and it's such a vast space because originally when I first learned about tech, I was primarily thinking like the hardware. I was thinking, or things like Vibe or, along those lines, but it can be so many different things. So
So
then,
many, even an app, right?
yeah,
An app which helps with therapy would be tech.
yeah,
um,
definitely.
or a website where you can find a coach, a relationship coach, right? That stack. So and originally when it started, I think it was quite limited to you have to be building hardware,
Right.
but it's expanded to anything that helps with improving your sex life, whether it's improving your health, improving your wellness, improving pleasure, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the most common questions I get from people is like, hey, Michelle, I'm really interested in sex tech. Like, how do I get into the sex tech industry? So, what would your answer be to that?
I would say don't think of it as, the industry as a whole. Think of it as the segment you want to tackle. So, like if you want to build an app and the app is a service, you know, I don't think it's that different from most software as a service, or, a service of connecting people, um, because the kind of things you would need to do, like the building the virality of it, getting people to spread word of mouth, doing the marketing of it, um, building the user experience journey, all of that are very core skills that apply to any app. Um, and and I guess the only difference is most people who do sex tech do it because they're passionate about solving certain problems.
Mhm.
Um, uh, so I think that's the only thing that I would say is an addition, but really it's the generic skills of building something, growing it, making it extremely user friendly, and then making it very easy to scale from a retention and engagement perspective would
Yeah.
really be it, rather than like specifically sex tech as an industry. I think it's kind of like saying you want to get into, you want to be in Hollywood, but it's like, what?
Yeah.
You could be
Right.
a sound engineer, you could be a director, you could be an actor, you could be, anything. But then you would basically specialize in that and be very good at it. And then you end up in Hollywood because you could be the best sound engineer in the world, and that would be your thing. But then you don't go to acting schools, right? Um,
Right. Yeah, I love that answer. That's a great piece of advice. It's like narrow down what you want to do. What part of the sex tech like space do you want to be in? And then I also think too, knowing your stuff, like know about sexual health, know about sexual wellness, and what makes the sexual health industry unique. Things that you really have challenges doing in sexual health that you wouldn't face in another industry.
Yes. Yes, I think that is the layer on top, which is, of course, you have to know what you're building and how you build it and how you scale it. But also, one is to be truly passionate about and whatever it is, whether it's health, whether it's therapy, whether it's pleasure, to truly care about that as the layer on top. And then, as a tangent from there, is understanding all the things you cannot do because it's in sex, and how do you navigate that? Because I think that is the biggest issue most people face, if they come at it from an outside perspective. And let's say, they built an app for dating, which is adjacent, but doesn't have any of the restrictions that, most tech companies will have. So even though it's adjacent and it has lots of similarities, you could come in and not be able to recreate any of the marketing channels that you have succeeded in before. So then you have to be extremely innovative on how do you get people to find out about you.
Right. And do you think that's the biggest challenge of working in the sexual health space is those restrictions?
Yes, I think if the restrictions weren't there, the other challenge would be much less, which is fundraising.
Mm.
I think they are interconnected because generally, VCs typically would fund a company who can spend the money on marketing to grow the revenue, or users or engagement, or whichever is the metric. But the fact that you can't spend the money like a traditional company would in marketing, say Meta ads or whatever, makes it harder for VCs to decide how they're going to give you the money, like what
Mhm.
you're going to do with it. So I think the underlying problem is the restrictions, and if they go away, then the rest of the problems, a lot of them would get solved. Then you'd just be treated like another company and valued on the merit of the company rather than the issues of the restrictions.
Before you watch the rest of our video, did you know a lot of people haven't subscribed to our channel yet? So if you love this type of content, go ahead and click subscribe now before you watch the rest of the video. Yeah, and you've been doing this for a while. And so what changes have you seen in this industry?
So the biggest change I would say is societal and people talking about things much more openly, and that applies to, um, very common thing like menopause, which every woman will go through. Prostate cancer, most men will have it at some point. Period pain, 1 in 3 women have. Now it's much more understood and talked about. But equally, something as simple as OnlyFans, which most people would be very openly aware of, and talk about, which, even though adult content existed obviously for decades, no one would really talk about um, a porn star beyond their close friend circle, whereas now people very happily would share, um, Instagram accounts of OnlyFans creators. So I think a lot has changed, especially in the last 5 years, both in health and pleasure. And there have been issues as well in terms of more restrictions from social media like Meta, and others. So I think, there has been positives and negatives, but overall, the awareness piece at a general public level has definitely helped a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I think like things have changed a lot even over like the last 10 years. So where do you see the future of this industry going?
It's very complicated because we see things getting better and things getting worse,
Mhm.
like separate things. So the issue is the stuff that's getting better, like, people being more aware, there's more education, there's more openness, which is brilliant. And that's obviously going to get better and better. And people will have access to better healthcare when it comes to sexual health. But I think the bigger challenge is it might be harder to do things in pleasure. For example, there was a recent law passed in the UK which makes it harder to access adult sites, and you have to use
Mhm.
credit card
Yeah,
to access it. And there's obviously logic behind certain things. The
sure.
execution is not effective in the sense that you can just, put a VPN. But the people who would um, struggle the most with it are older people who are not tech savvy enough
Yeah,
to understand things like VPN, who would enter their credit card details, and there will definitely be bad actors who will then use those credit card details to defraud them, which doesn't help anyone. So,
right.
and like, why would you even bother asking a 60-year-old to prove their age? If there is a easier way
Right.
to do that,
Right.
and when teenagers know how to use VPNs to bypass that. So I think that's the bigger challenge is um, when things happen that might have a good reason for doing but are not executed in a way that protects the consumer, then people will get hurt. So
Yeah.
so that's why I'm not really sure, you know, overall where like what happens in the next 5 years. Hopefully people learn lessons from these and do a better implementation. Um, like for example, it makes sense to um, hide content that is very um, violent or inappropriate for kids,
Right.
but they will probably or is probably seeing that on social media rather than on adult sites.
Mm.
So the So if you really want to protect kids from content that can traumatize them, which is obviously a very valid point, then you need
Yeah.
to find where that content is and where they are consuming it and figure out a way to filter that content. And that involves educating schools, educating parents, working with big corporates, and it could be adult sites as well, but not specifically adult sites. It could be a TikTok, it could be a Instagram, it could be, a news site, or there could be so many ways it gets to them. So I think the challenge is a lot of policies are made in isolation, which starts often from a very logical point, but the implementation becomes very difficult to protect the consumer and achieve the goal that they're trying to reach. So I think that's the big challenge I feel is
Mhm.
how do we advise policymakers so they achieve their goals, and the high level goal is protect children from seeing traumatic stuff, totally
Right.
valid. And
Right.
then how can we as an industry help them achieve that goal in a
Yeah.
way that it actually does that and doesn't end up causing problems to older generations who are not, or anyone who's not tech savvy, because I think those are the people who suffer from a lot of these issues is people who are not tech savvy will end up losing money,
Right.
or
Exactly.
losing their identity and identity theft and a whole host of issues.
Right, right. And it just restricts access to those who are privileged enough to have a credit card or to have an ID. I know here in the States, there's a large amount of people who cannot afford to go purchase a government ID or they cannot afford to have a credit card, so it just wipes out
Yeah.
that whole group of people too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I think that's the mix where society as a whole has definitely, improved hugely when it comes to awareness, education, sexual health, sexual pleasure. But then how do you manage policymakers to then do the right implementation of policy, which is a big challenge, and it's a big challenge anywhere.
Right. So my last question for you is about money. Let's talk about money. So if someone is like, okay, I love sexual health. I love technology. I know I want to be in this space, but I want to go into an aspect of this industry where I know I'm going to make some money. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, that's very hard. Because the thing is, like with any other startup, let's just, bucket this whole thing as a startup, right?
Yeah.
Because you're starting something new and then you have to build it from scratch. 99 out of 100 will fail. And that's just the reality of it, right? So I think the truth is, if you solve something that enough people want to pay for, you will make money. Otherwise, you won't. And that's it. And it doesn't really matter whether it's tech or, something else.
Mhm.
Um, we just have to assume that 99 will fail. And then you learn from that failure and you do the next one. And that's the whole point, right? So you do startup, you learn, and you do again and you learn. And maybe, it's your third time that you are really successful. But and that mindset has to be a given, that you do startups, and if it works out first time, amazing. Um, and if it doesn't, you learn so much. You do it the second time, and you probably will do a really good job, and maybe the third time will be amazing, right? So that's one piece. But assuming that piece is a given, that 99 out of 100 fail, I think if you are solving something, even if it's one significant thing, which is enough audience, and that's really important. And if you could solve something that you know only 1% of the population suffers from, it may not be worth spending 10 years on,
Yeah.
unless it's a research project, which is totally fine, grant funded research project. But let's say you're trying to build a big commercial business, um, then you want to solve something which affects millions of people. And even if something already exists as a solution, your solution is better or easier and more cost effective. That would be the easiest way to come in and be able to convince the people who suffer from that issue to pay what is the right price for the product.
Hmm.
And if that is true, which is product market fit, then and that can be scaled, then there is no reason why you wouldn't make money. However that money is, whether it's money as a long-term business, earning a profit, or money as in selling the company to a bigger company or IPOing it at some point. So I think that fundamental is all that matters, um, and it's not specific to tech. Yes, there are some extra challenges, but I don't think it makes that much difference as long as you have a product that people want. Like, if you take the example of OnlyFans,
Yeah.
they can't advertise anywhere, but it's
Yeah.
a product there's enough people who want to pay for, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't run any ads anywhere, so they have the same restrictions, but they have a product that people want to pay for, and it's different enough that they could stand out
Hmm.
against big adult tube sites. So I think that's a very simple way of looking at it. Basically, our linear journey, like starting from a sketch, and even before that, where we get ideas from, how do we basically get told by clinicians, these are the problems, these are the current ways we're trying to solve them. Can you figure out a way of creating devices to solve this problem, which would be basically at-home patient care? That's what we do, at-home patient care. How can you create something that someone can use at home on their own easily and solve the problem, whether it's pain, erection, ejaculation, whatever, um, with minimal supervision, customization, back and forth. So that's the high level, and then going through the whole journey of R&D, regulatory approval, clinical trials, reimbursement, enough doctors, enough patients to then be a continuous running device in our clinic.
Thanks for watching our video with Dr. Soum Rakshit. Oh, he's so amazing. Do us a favor and share this with someone who might benefit from this information. Your support helps us reach more people with important sexual health information. If you're passionate about this space, we know you'll enjoy these videos, so check them out. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and remember, you are exceptional.